What if the next major military leap by North Korea doesn't come from a missile test, but from a factory floor hundreds of miles away in China? A single social media video, quietly posted and then deleted, may have revealed something far bigger than it first appeared. A drone assembly line capable of producing up to 100 drones a day, allegedly destined for Pyongyang. In a world already shaped by drone warfare, nuclear brinkmanship, and proxy conflicts, this raises an unsettling question. Are we watching the quiet acceleration of a new military era on the Korean peninsula? If this development escalates, it fundamentally reshapes the security equation in Northeast Asia. If it fails or is contained, it exposes the limits of sanctions and enforcement in a fractured global order. And if it succeeds quietly, without formal acknowledgement, it may signal that modern warfare no longer hinges on treaties or declarations, but on supply chains, industrial know-how, and plausible deniability. What's at stake here isn't just North Korea's arsenal, it's the credibility of global arms control and the future balance of power in regions already stretched thin. To understand why this matters, you have to zoom out. North Korea is not a newcomer to military innovation. For decades, Pyongyang has poured resources into ballistic missiles and nuclear warheads, achieving what many once thought impossible for a heavily sanctioned state. By most estimates, North Korea now possesses dozens of nuclear weapons and a growing range of delivery systems, including intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the continental United States. That alone has kept the Korean peninsula in a permanent state of tension. But warfare is changing. The wars in Ukraine and the Middle East have demonstrated that drones, cheap, expendable, and devastatingly effective, can alter battlefields faster than traditional platforms ever could. Surveillance drones have become indispensable for targeting. Kamikaze drones blur the line between missile and aircraft. Swarm tactics overwhelm air defenses that cost millions to deploy. North Korea has been watching all of this closely. Over the past 2 years, Pyongyang has openly declared autonomous aerial vehicles a top military priority. It has tested reconnaissance drones, unveiled loitering munitions, and showcased mock attacks on South Korean targets during military exhibitions. At the same time, North Korean soldiers deployed alongside Russian forces in Ukraine have reportedly gained first-hand experience with modern drone warfare, how drones are built, deployed, jammed, and destroyed in real combat conditions. That battlefield education is invaluable, and it feeds directly into the story unfolding now. This is where China enters the picture. China is the world's dominant producer of commercial drones, controlling an overwhelming share of the global market. One Chinese firm alone accounts for roughly 80% of consumer drone sales worldwide. Beyond finished drones, China also dominates the manufacturing ecosystem. Motors, sensors, cameras, software, and critically automated assembly systems. The video that triggered this controversy allegedly showed a Chinese manufacturer testing a pre-assembled drone production line before shipment to North Korea. According to reporting, the system was capable of assembling up to 100 drones per day using a U-shaped automated workflow. The post was quickly removed, but not before it raised a key concern among analysts. Exporting an assembly line is far more consequential than exporting finished drones. Finished drones can be tracked, seized, or sanctioned. An assembly line transfers capability. It teaches process, scale, and efficiency. Once inside North Korea, such a system could be reverse engineered, replicated, and expanded, potentially allowing Pyongyang to build multiple production lines with domestic materials. That's the difference between dependency and self-sufficiency. China officially maintains that it restricts drone exports, especially to conflict zones, yet enforcement gaps have been repeatedly exposed, particularly regarding Russia's access to Chinese drone components during the Ukraine war. The ambiguity often lies in dual-use technology. equipment that can be labeled civilian while easily adapted for military purposes. Automated assembly machinery falls squarely into that gray zone. For Beijing, the calculus is layered. China does not want a nuclear-armed North Korea spiraling out of control, but it also values Pyongyang as a strategic buffer against US influence and military presence in Northeast Asia. Empowering North Korea just enough to remain defiant, but not enough to provoke full-scale war, has long been part of that balancing act. Whether this alleged export was state-directed, tacitly tolerated, or simply overlooked remains unclear. But in geopolitics, outcomes often matter more than intentions. Now consider the first what if. What if North Korea successfully scales domestic drone production using Chinese industrial know-how? Combined with its missile forces, this would give Pyongyang a layered strike capability. Missiles for deterrence and strategic signaling, drones for surveillance, saturation attacks, and asymmetric warfare. South Korea's air defenses, already calibrated for missiles, would face a far more complex threat environment. Japan would be drawn deeper into missile and drone defense cooperation with the US. The risk of miscalculation would rise sharply. Here's the second what if. What if this triggers a broader regional response? South Korea and Japan may accelerate their own drone and counter-drone programs, while the US tightens technology controls on China. That in turn could push Beijing to double down on indigenous supply chains and alternative markets, deepening the global split in technology ecosystems. What starts as a factory shipment could ripple outward into trade wars, sanctions escalation, and hardened blocs. The implications don't stop in East Asia. In South Asia, India is watching closely. New Delhi already faces drone threats along its borders, particularly from Pakistan, and has growing concerns about Chinese military technology transfers. A North Korea with advanced drone manufacturing reinforces India's push to harden defenses and expand indigenous production, potentially accelerating regional arms competition. In the Middle East, the lesson is even starker. Iran has already demonstrated how locally produced drones can reshape conflict dynamics from Yemen to Gaza. A more capable North Korea strengthens the informal network of sanctioned states sharing tactics, designs, and operational lessons. Even without direct transfers, the diffusion of know-how lowers barriers for non-state actors and smaller militaries alike. Economically, the stakes are equally significant. Drones are no longer niche weapons. They are a mass-market military technology. Whoever controls production controls leverage. If sanctions regimes cannot prevent the transfer of manufacturing capability, their deterrent power erodes. That undermines not just North Korea's sanctions, but the broader credibility of international export controls. Diplomatically, this puts pressure on Beijing. China presents itself as a responsible global actor, yet repeated incidents involving drone technology blur that narrative. For Washington and its allies, the challenge is responding without escalating into open confrontation, especially when evidence lives in the murky space between corporate action and state policy. As this story unfolds, one thing is clear. Modern power is increasingly built in silence, not through parades or tests, but through machines, code, and industrial systems that quietly multiply capability. North Korea understands this, China understands this, and the rest of the world is being forced to adapt in real time. So watch what happens next. Watch supply chains, not speeches. Watch factories, not summits. Because the future of conflict may not be decided by who has the biggest missile, but by who can build the most drones, the fastest, without anyone stopping them. And here's the uncomfortable truth to end on. In today's world, the most dangerous weapons don't always arrive with a launch, they arrive with a shipment.